Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Financial Advisors Want to Know podcast. This is Catherine Tindall. I'm a CPA here at Dominion. We're a firm that specializes in tax strategy work for advisor firms. And on today's episode, I have with me Anna Njai-Conte. She's an MBA, a CFP, and she's the CEO of Poder Wealth Advisors. She helps women navigate financial decisions after divorce, inheritance, or business exits, and helps them create aligned lives where their wealth, legacy, and philanthropic plans are rooted into their values. You have a strong background in, your own rich heritage being Puerto Rican and Gambian-American, and you're committed to building a firm where excellent values-aligned financial advice is the norm, which is not always the norm,
Yeah.
not the exception. And she spent her childhood watching the strong women in her life, strong women around her life, their lives dictated by bank balances and fears around money and, mindset issues. And so she's on a mission to rewrite the money stories of women of color. She's been a 3 times winner of the Investopedia's top 100 influential financial advisors and has been named within the 10 young advisors to watch by Financial Advisor magazine. She serves as a CFE board brand ambassador and an advisory board member to wealth.com and a board member to the FinServ Foundation. So you have a lot on your plate, Anna.
I do. Just hearing that, I'm like, gosh, I'm tired.
Yeah, you're a
You didn't even
one-woman
mention my kids yet.
powerhouse. Yeah. So I'm excited to have you on the show because I think your story and, the heart that you have for your clients and the work that you're doing, like we got connected through a coaching program that we were doing together. And I've just been so impressed with, you and how you're building things, and wanted to have the opportunity to get you to share your story with the people, the advisors who listen to this program. So thanks for coming on.
Thanks so much. I'm super excited to be here. Talk shop a little bit.
Yeah. So, I had an episode previously where an advisor came on and he was talking about his shift into RIA. And he had a lot of positive things to say. He was happy he made the transition. I know we've had this conversation a little bit before in the past too, but I think it's one that maybe the more people need to hear it in terms of, what that journey was like for you going RIA. So I guess maybe to take a step back, like for people who aren't familiar with you, what's your journey been like? And, how did you find yourself in the RIA model after, your experience?
I think I was a little bit of an anomaly in that I wasn't as aware of sort of the independent RIA space, but I was working at a wirehouse before I launched my firm in 2019.
Mm-hmm.
And I really was in a space where I wanted to do something different than, what my firm was offering me.
Yeah.
And that really just forced me to do some research and look around. And I discovered the independent RIA model. And as I did my research, I listened to a lot of podcasts in that time period, in doing my research and trying to figure out whether this was a viable path for me. And it became really clear that that would probably be the best option for me personally, because I had these aspirations of building a very atypical business model.
Yep.
And I also knew that it was going to be so important to me to have a lot of autonomy and control over the types of clients I brought in, and also my time, because I'm a mom and, have a full life outside of work. And that I was always going to put a premium on that. And so the RIA space ended up, really just being the best option. So, 2019, heavily pregnant, I went on maternity leave and launched the RIA from the couch with a nursing baby.
Oh, wow. Good on you. So how's the journey been? Like, what were there any surprises in the, once you switched into the model that you weren't expecting, or was it all just kind of, yep, this was all the hard I was expecting after researching?
There was a lot that was hard. I think I recognized, like, I knew when I was leaving a wirehouse, I was giving up the investment due diligence. I was giving up the internal investment due diligence. I was giving up the internal compliance, whatever semblance of a marketing team that we had, which wasn't super robust from my vantage point, but it was there. I was giving up all that in favor of having a lot of flexibility. So that wasn't really a surprise to me. I think And I think advisors are really interesting in that we already operate, or at least a lot of us already operate in sort of a business within a business, even if we
Yeah.
are at a larger firm.
Yeah.
And
True.
so we're all used to managing a lot of things, creating our own processes and having our own way of doing things as well with minimal supervision.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's a lot of supervision depending on the firm, but I was already used to that environment. So
Hmm.
I think this was just what I was used to with the dial turned up a whole lot.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
What I didn't anticipate, though, I would say that was a surprise, was just how appealing it was to prospective clients that I was independent. That took me
Mm.
by surprise because I didn't really think that. I think the perception or the messaging that's sold by a lot of larger firms to advisors is that, clients want the big name. They want
Yeah.
the big established name, they want the big established firm, and I think that may be true for some people. It's not, we're not gonna paint everybody with broad brushstrokes, but there were a lot that really wanted someone independent, and so they were very excited to find me and see that I didn't have a larger organization above me.
Yeah. No, I think that that's a really valid point because I've noticed that in a lot of the conversations I've had with advisors that like a lot of the just consumer behavior has changed in terms of
Mhm.
like how clients are researching them, how they
Yes.
find them, how they connect with them. And so like as you've been building up the firm, I think it's really interesting that you've really niched down into who you serve as a target
Yeah.
audience of clientele. And I imagine that a lot of that connection there with oh, you're independent, you're on my side, you know, the clients can feel that more just because of maybe the particular group that you work with. Can you talk a little
Yeah.
bit about like what kind of clients you work with and like how you kind of defined the which clients that you were targeting to work with as you
Yeah.
built up the firm and that journey that you had?
Sure, that's definitely changed. I would say at the outset, I had a very clear target of working with folks that were mid-career.
Mhm.
So, people who were not quite retirees, which is mostly what our industry focuses on, but I
Yeah.
think that's a really huge missed opportunity if you ask me. But, most of my training was working with retirees, and I just recognized that because of my own story and my own trajectory in terms of my personal finances and how much I knew that this knowledge working in wealth management served me in building my own wealth,
Mhm.
that led me to want to help people a little bit earlier before while we still had lots of time to make appropriate changes that would
Yeah.
serve them well. So that was my first outset. I said, I'm going to work with people under the age of 55. They still have a really long investment time horizon, and we're going to figure that out. That evolved over time, and I always had a soft spot for working with women. I grew up with a single mom, and so that was something that was really important to me
Mhm.
anyway, just internally. But over time, I noticed that women, single women, divorced women in particular, really seemed to gravitate towards me. I would guess, I don't actually have the stats, I'll have to calculate it, but I would guess that 75% of my client base is single women. Either they've always been single or they were divorced.
Mhm.
And I realized that I really enjoyed working with those clients because I recognized that they really valued having me as a thought partner, and they
Mhm.
were strong go-getters, going to get it done, going to handle what they needed to handle in their lives, and they really just needed someone to help direct them and take a lot of the implementation off of their plate.
Yeah.
So that has really just evolved over time. And I found that the clients I've enjoyed working with the most are the ones that have sort of this sudden influx of wealth or a sudden liquidity event.
Mhm.
And now they're looking at it and saying, okay, now I have all of these options. What do I do with it? And how can I be as impactful as possible, both within my own family and then, with this wealth through impact investing and values aligned investing and philanthropy.
Mhm. Yeah, that's great. And in terms of like as you've been growing the practice, have you been finding most of the new clients coming in like they find you through referrals from other clients or like what kind of activities have you been doing to grow the firm?
I think a lot of the same. I mean, in some ways, all financial advisors find a lot of clients through referrals from existing clients, or they find them through, attorneys, CPAs, the like.
Mhm.
That's been a strong referral source for me for sure. But I have always really leveraged social media. So when I built my firm, I didn't share this earlier, but when I went into creating the vision for the firm, I wanted it to be virtual from the outset, mostly
Mm,
because I was going to have a young baby. I had a 2-year-old at home, and I knew that I needed a lot of flexibility. Yes, I was going to have childcare and I was going to have that, but if a kid was sick, I needed to know that yes, I could still get my work done. I didn't have to worry about having to go in person to meet clients and the like. And I wanted clients who would be comfortable with that.
yeah.
Then the
Yep.
pandemic, and so I knew that I had to have a strong online presence to continue to attract those clients because they might not necessarily be in my local area.
Mhm.
The pandemic hit 6 months after I launched my firm, and that was a wake-up call. So everybody had to be virtual,
Yeah, yeah.
and so that made me see that social media and having a strong online presence was going to be even more important
Mhm.
for my marketing and for my firm growth and for generating leads for new clients. And so that has always been really strong for me. And I find that I probably find get half of my clients through referrals and the other half through some sort of online presence.
Wow. No, that's a really good ratio because like I've heard statistics that it's like typically like 80% will come
Mhm.
through
Yeah.
like direct client referrals. And so the fact that you've been able to shift that to being, that nice mix,
Yeah.
that's great,
I
especially too
just
with having a remote practice. Like,
exactly. And
awesome.
no, I mean it's incredible. I just had um a prospective client call yesterday with someone who has, 5 million net worth, found me from an article I contributed to on a website
Mhm.
maybe
Yeah.
3 years ago.
I know it's so funny with the social media stuff, like how the seeds you plant
Yes.
at first you're like, oh, this is only getting, 100 views or
Yeah.
200 views or, a couple likes here and there. But then all of the sudden it's like, oh, yeah, this conversation that I had 2 years ago is now materializing into
Yes.
an engagement, or this
Mhm.
article that I wrote, or this podcast that I did, or whatever it is. It takes a while to get those seeds to bear fruit sometimes. But
Exactly.
as long as you're continually improving, staying consistent with the volume and everything, it just
Yeah.
turns into a numbers game a lot of the time, especially
I
when,
agree.
like for your situation where you have a very specific avatar you're talking to.
Mhm.
And so it's easy for them to find you and it's easy for them to engage with the content and say, oh, she's talking to me. It
Yes,
makes a
definitely.
huge difference. Just a slight interruption in this conversation. I wanted to bring to your attention two things that are important for you to know. So, we're always at the mercy of social media algorithms. So, if you can subscribe to the show, that would mean a lot to me. Even more to me if you can leave a rating and let me know what you think about it. But we have a new newsletter that's coming out. It's going to be very active in 2025 that is specifically around tax issues that I'm seeing advisors face in their own practices, changes in legislations, and the pieces that I think are critically important for you to stay ahead of as an advisor with the new administration. So, nearby, wherever you're interacting with this, will be the link of how to sign up for our newsletter. Also, nearby will be the link to my LinkedIn, which is the best way to get in touch with me, learn more about what we're doing for advisors in the tax strategy and compliance work that we do, and also to get access to the various tools and interviews and things that I do, specifically designed to help you improve your practice, improve your own tax situation, etc. So let's get back to the episode, and thanks for tuning in.
It does. And Catherine, to add on to that, I also think that it used to be, and I know that a lot of advisors still operate very hyper local. And
Yeah.
that's, I think, a very valid business model if that
Mhm.
works for you.
Yep.
But I also know that, part of what I think escapes some advisors is by being very local, you have a lot of social proof. You may have some, contacts that the client knows that sort of know you second, third hand and can vouch for you. And so because I don't operate in that way, I have to have a way for folks to feel confident that I know what I'm talking about, that I'm good at what I do. And if we're talking about a lead that comes to me that's not from my clients or someone who has worked with me in the past, a close referral, then they're going to look at my content. They're going to search my name and look at my content, look at my social media accounts and see, what is this person about? The same prospect I mentioned yesterday started talking to me about working out because he knew that I that I'm very big on fitness, and
Mhm.
that's something that's really important to me, and because I post about it. And so he had a sense, I think, of my personality already and
Mhm.
felt very comfortable that way too.
Yeah, no, it makes a huge difference, and I've noticed the same thing on my side with like, I do a lot of webinars and these podcasts and things, and so that by the time I'm actually talking to another advisor who's interested in, like, working with us on the tax stuff, it's kind of weird in a way because they'll approach me and they'll be like, "I've never met you before, but you're talking to me like you like you know me."
Yeah, yeah,
And
for
that's the power of
sure.
the content, and it's, by the time they get to you, it's like they already do know you, and so you
For
can just
sure.
spend the time getting to know them rather than having to talk about yourself a lot, which is
I I agree, and I will say I heard something at a business training last week that really stuck with me on this point to really drive this point home. The woman leading the training talked about how consumers on average need to consume 7 hours of content for a service provider that they're going to buy from
mhm,
before they feel comfortable buying.
yeah,
So think about, that could be webinars, it could be, podcasts, it could be short form video, it could be articles, whatever it is for you, email newsletters, but they need to consume hours and hours and have multiple touch points. I think it was 11 different touch points in order to feel really confident that they know who you are, what you're about, and whether you can help them. And
yeah.
so I think even if you are operating in a hyper local market, I also would strongly recommend everyone to have a solid online presence.
Yeah, absolutely. And we've done a number of, for people who are interested in that, we've done a number of episodes from different marketing experts talking about like how you can go about really planning that. But a
Mhm.
lot of it comes down to that kind of initial piece of, well, who's the audience that you serve and really defining down like
For
who's
sure.
your ideal client profile and how do you help them and what's the pain that you solve for and those kinds of questions. I think one question I have for you, we're going to be seeing like a lot of change over the next year, couple of years. I'm seeing a lot of people jump and go RIA. Like we even have, for anybody listening who's interested in that, we have a like an administrative checklist that we use with our clients that I give out to people if they want it, of just like all the silly things that you got to do, all the little hoops you got to jump through in order to make that transition. But in terms of like your experience in the industry, what are some shifts and things that you've been seeing in terms of like the way business models have been changing for advisor firms? You know, I think a big one is building a future-proof firm and
Mhm.
what's going on with AI. Like what have you been seeing and what do you kind of see
Yeah.
on the horizon, for yourself and for the industry?
I think that the consumer is just so much more savvy. So
Mhm.
investors are so much more savvy.
Yeah.
And before we could get away with basics and
Mhm.
have that be sort of the extent of our service model. And
Yeah.
now a lot of the things that people even considered going above and beyond before is really table stakes in my mind.
Mm.
And especially when we think about the generational changes that are happening and this great wealth transfer that's happening from, boomers and silent generation to Gen X and millennials and maybe even Gen Z. Like that transition that's happening, those younger generations are so much more demanding in terms of the caliber of service, the ease of doing business, the suite of services that advisors are offering. And if you are not keeping up with that, you're really being left behind. You're really
Mm.
like gonna go the way of the dinosaur, because those people are not gonna stick around. I will even say for myself. Now, I think this has become exacerbated now that I've been running my own practice and have been an entrepreneur for several years at this point. But I will say that I have a very low tolerance for people with really inefficient systems, people with, poor like customer service, poor responsiveness, and poor user interface. And so that's been a huge focus for me, is making sure that not only is the service I'm offering clients, but is the client experience solid
Yeah.
and positive and easy for the clients to access and manage. I also think that, leveraging tech as part of that is going to be really important.
Mhm.
Um, because AI is coming and it is going to continue to take so many of the, table stakes things off of our plate, the things that are not very impressive or not don't require a lot of human thought.
Yeah.
And that's going to require advisors to continue to lean into the things that do require us as humans to do, right?
Mhm.
Having talking to a client and understanding their cultural values or their personal values and being able to help them make a decision about their finances or an investment or an inheritance or, gift that they're trying to make, whatever that is. Through that lens, I don't see AI being in a place anytime soon where it can replace that, right?
Yeah.
It can automatically scan through my client's spending to come up with an expense number for me to use in my financial planning projections. It can
Mhm.
probably, it can scan. I have software now that will scan a whole estate document and come up with a flow chart of who's the guardian, who's the executor, who's the power of attorney, so on and so forth. How do the assets flow to the beneficiaries? It can do all of that.
Mhm.
But what it can do is do that and have a conversation with my client about like, this is the right decision for you long term because of X, Y, and Z priority that you have.
Yeah, absolutely. So in terms of things that you've found having kind of a good return on investment for things you've put into your firm or
Mm,
self-development things you've done for yourself, what are some pieces that, looking at yourself kind of at the beginning of your practice or, even now, like when you talk to other advisors of oh, I just wish they knew about this, or, oh, I just wish
yeah,
everyone did that. Are there any pieces that you feel strongly about, like within your own firm or your own self-development that you
yeah.
think people should hear?
There are so many. I think that there's so many, but going into myself, I've always been a big proponent of coaching, and I
Mhm,
think that that has made me a much better human over across the board, which the more kind of emotional intelligence, emotional awareness that we have as individuals, the better advisors we're going to be because we can read cues, we can empathize with clients and really understand what's going on for them and coach them
mhm,
accordingly about what they should and should not do. I think the other thing though that I've always done that has served me well and continues to serve me well is I don't spend my time looking at what other advisors are doing because I
mm,
think most advisors are like in they're still living in the 90s or early 2000s in terms of their business
mhm.
model, how they operate, their tech interface, so on
Yeah,
and so forth. And so I'm always, looking around to other industries to see what are
mhm,
other industries doing and how can I take that into my business model. So I'll give you an example. I have a graphic designer. I just did a rebrand of my website, right? I just did a
mhm,
brand new website. And my graphic designer has a seamless interface for a proposal, for tracking the project in
mhm,
one place, right? So I sign my contract, I execute payment there. She has a user interface that shows me how far I've gone, where I am on the project or in the scope of the project. It has pertinent files in there so that if I want to see, hey, what did we do at phase one? And can I get that file, like look at that PDF that she put together for me? I can go through all of that together. Name a financial advisor practice that's that seamless.
yeah,
Almost nothing. And that inspired me once I started working with her earlier this year to say, I want to build a client portal for my clients that has that seamlessness. So that's about to roll out to my clients later this month. Those are the kind of ideas that if you stay focused on our industry, you're not going to get those.
yeah.
And once again, once that wealth transfer starts happening, it's already happening, but once it really kicks off, then you're going to be left behind and wondering why your clients' grandkids don't return your phone calls.
Yeah, no, it's true because it's like I always say, you're not, especially like with consumer behavior now, it's like you're not getting compared against your competition. You're getting compared against Apple and Amazon, and
Yes.
like you're getting compared against the best because that's who they're used to interacting with, and they get
Mhm.
frustrated when it's like, why are you asking me this question? It was on on documentation I already sent you, or
Exactly.
um, why do I have to like have passwords and all this stuff for these things, or just whatever like the little frustration points are within the
Mhm.
processes that we have. Yeah, so it's a big. I think that's a great piece of advice. Is like look at other businesses. I've been joking with my husband like I've been wanting to go to Disneyland for a while, not
Mhm.
to just like go to Disneyland and enjoy it, but to like I just want to see like the just massive amount of supply chain management that goes on there.
Yes. Right?
Like
And when
go
you
as
think
like a business field trip.
exactly. It's like everything running like a well-oiled machine, and it makes it
Yeah.
so easy for you to enjoy that experience.
Mhm.
And that's what I aim for with my clients. I can't always get there because, there are regulatory hurdles and things that I can't necessarily integrate and have to be mindful of, but I'm getting as close as I can for right now.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's great. And that'll serve you well as you continue to grow. So for advisors who are interested in connecting with you and, uh, spying on you, what's the best place for them to get to know you better, Anna?
Yeah, so you can follow me on LinkedIn. You can just search my name and find me there. I spend a lot of time there, usually ranting about our industry. So if you want some hot takes and some spicy points of view, then that's the place to find me. The other is Instagram, where I hang out a lot. That's where I get a lot of my leads for my business. And my username is just my whole name all put together.
Nice. That's great. Well, I want to thank you for joining on the show. For the
My pleasure.
advisors listening, if you're thinking about going RA, I know I mentioned we have a checklist. Send me a DM on LinkedIn. Happy to send that over to you guys. But always interested as well to hear what you took away from the episode and the conversation. But I want to thank you again, Anna, for coming on.
My
Um,
pleasure.
and this was another episode of the Financial Advisors Want to Know podcast.